see. That looks, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I got that one. Yeah. Okay, now how about this other thing over here? Yeah.
What's this? What did I just hear that you got?
Hi, Mr. Z.
Hey, Watson, what did you find?
I was just trying to identify some things here, and this piece of fur here, I know now that it's an antelope.
This is an antelope.
Yeah.
Welcome to Give Science a Hint. It looks like Watson steamrolled his cat here.
Nah.
We know he doesn't do things like that. Now, what kind of fur is this?
That's the fur of an antelope.
It's the fur of an antelope.
Yeah.
And look at the student he is. He's got books here. He's got a bird book, an ornithology book. You've got a book on mammals.
Right.
You've got a book on plants. I am impressed. I am impressed. Now, what is this?
That's a horn.
This is a horn.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like half of a matched pair.
Well, gee, I think it might be from a cow.
It could very well be. In fact, your research says that it is. In fact, if we put this up against you here, we could turn you into Leif Watson.
Gee,
like Leif Erikson, you could be one of the Vikings.
Yeah.
How many of you have been like Watson? You've gone and you found something like a horn, like a piece of fur. You've been in your basement and you found an insect and you couldn't quite identify it. You didn't know its name. Or you were at the beach, you went to Ocean City, you found a shell on the shore and you wondered, where has this shell been?
Yeah.
Or you have a plant like we do here. This plant, what's it called? Does it have a scientific name? What's it good for? How did it get to the place where you found it? If you have questions like that, you're watching the right program, because today we're going to the Smithsonian.
You are?
We are.
Yeah.
Now, Watson, we're not going to take you along. Don't feel left out. But we're going to find out how you can identify unknown organisms like the ones we just talked about.
Oh, gee.
Now, Watson, is there anything you'd like me to take along?
Yeah, sure is, Mr. Z.
I mean, you've done a good job with the fur and with the horn.
Yeah.
Oh, over here.
Yeah, right over here in the bag.
It's in the bag.
Yeah, I've got some things I found. Yeah.
I've heard that before.
Well, I got a seashell in there, but I'm not quite sure what kind of shell it is. And,
all right.
And what
else do you have?
There's a bone.
There's a bone down here, and it's marked Watson Sr. Is this from your grandfather?
Sure is.
Watson's grandfather has given us something to take down to the Smithsonian, so we're going down to the Naturalist Center, to the National Museum of Natural History, to try to find out how we can identify organisms. We're also going to show you and Watson how to draw creatures. So if you're an artist, or you think you're an artist, or would like to be, stay with us, because we're going to show you how that's done. You ready to go?
See you later, Mr. Z.
Okay.
How many of you have ever come back from Ocean City with a pocket full of shells and wondered, what are all of these things? Do they have names? Where did they come from? Or if you've ever been outside, you're digging in your backyard and you find a little bone fragment. The detective in you wants to know, what animal did this come from? Well, today we're in a place where we can find out. We're going to be Sherlock Holmes today. We're going to find out what kind of animals they are, what kind of shells they are, because we have Richard Eftham, who's the manager of the Naturalist Center. We're at the Smithsonian Museum, specifically the National Museum of Natural History. And other than those two reasons, shells that don't have names and bones that don't have animals, Richard, what are some other reasons why students might come down here to the Naturalist Center?
Well, Dave, a lot of reasons. For example, people come in here to get information for school papers, to develop hobbies like shell collecting, rock collecting, insect collecting. We have a lot of people who like to use the objects that are here for drawing, illustrations, and other sorts of artwork.
So it sounds like a good resource, a good research center. How old does a student have to be to come here?
Well, a person needs to be 12 years of age and older to come into the Naturalist Center.
So if you're sitting out there and you're saying, darn, I'm just not the right age, keep this in mind for some future date when you come down here and turn yourself into an amateur naturalist. Now, if a student finds an insect that they're not sure what kind it is, they're outside, they see it crawling by, or maybe it's in the bathtub for some unknown reason, could they come down here to find out what it is?
Sure. We have a lot of people who come to the Natural Center as part of our regular service. We try to help them identify all these sorts of natural surprises and oddities that people are always finding.
So today we're going to show you how to identify an unknown specimen, and this stuffed raccoon here is going to keep a close eye on us to make sure we do it the right way. We're also going to show you, if you're an artist, how you can draw animals and other objects in nature and make them look as accurate as you can. We have a professional illustrator here. And we're also going to tell you the story of the American buffalo through fossils and through fragments of that animal. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Richard, when I told Watson I was coming down to the Naturalist Center, he slipped something in my pocket and I brought it along. He said he found this shell on his last vacation. Now, we don't know what it is. And he said, I can't return until I find out what this shell is called. Can you help us out? Is this something the Naturalist Center can do?
Sure. Dave, Watson sent you to the right place. He's also sent us a good puzzle, so we'll have to work a little hard to figure out what this is. It's useful, I think, for your viewers to know that the Natural Center is a place where people can come in and have these things identified or to do that themselves. And we have one special event that we hold a number of times during the year called Identi-Day. And that's a time when visitors can bring in all these natural oddities like this shell here. And they can meet with professional curators, scientists, and the like to help them to identify all these sorts of neat things.
Okay, so watch your newspaper and look for Identi-Day, which is short, I guess, for Identification Day. But we have special privileges today. This is a special Identi-Day for Watson. Okay, feel very privileged, Watson. We see a large collection of shells back here. Richard, what's the first step? How do we narrow it down? Can we group shells together, and do they have names?
Scientists do group these animals together in different sorts of ways. And the way that we'll try to identify this shell is to find out what major groups that scientists have discovered this animal fits in. And that's the way we'll do it. We'll use that kind of a scientific hunt and search.
Okay, now I see a lot of cabinets here marked mollusca. Now, is that a name that applies to this shell?
Yeah, this would be in the family of mollusks. Other animals include clams, snails, and very other sorts of things like that.
Okay, now this program is called Shells in the Attic because we're talking about shells, and the Smithsonian is often referred to affectionately as the nation's attic. Why don't we open up some of the creaky doors here? Maybe they're not too creaky.
Okay, let's open up this one here. These cabinets are the same kinds of cabinets that are used in the research department, so this is a really neat place for visitors to come and see and imagine what it's like to be a scientist in a museum, because they get to do the same sorts of things that a scientist does.
So if you're watching this program thinking, boy, I would like to grow up to be a research scientist, I want to be an archaeologist or a paleontologist or one of those other words you probably can't pronounce right now, this is a place to come and see how professionals do it. This is Smithsonian for kids, if you will. Let's see what's in the drawers.
Well, we've got a number of drawers here. I don't know if you can see in here well, but we have these shells all grouped together by very similar characteristics. You can see how all of these look a lot alike, but you can also see that the one that we found looks a lot different from all of these, so it's obviously not in this drawer.
Okay, we picked the wrong drawer. Okay, we're going to try another one here. As you can see, there's so many different varieties, and animals, as this shell is, have names, special names that a lot of us don't understand. They're called scientific names. They have a first name called a genus, a second name called a species, and they're in Latin or Greek so that people all around the world can commonly identify them. It's agreed upon that those languages would be used. I think we've got a winner here, Watson. I think Detective Richard here has come up with what that shell is. What do you have, Richard?
What we have here, Dave and Watson, is a shell called the limpet shell. You can see how these two look a lot alike. They're commonly called keyhole limpets, and the reason why I call it keyhole is because of this hole that's in the middle of the shell. These animals are typically found in very rough waters where there's lots of rocks, and they'll attach themselves to the rocks like this and just wait for food or scrape food off of these rocks. The little hole here helps them to blow out bad water that they may have sucked in.
So that's a special adaptation that this animal has. So the shell you've got, Watson, is a limpet. Is that L-I-M-P-E-T? P-E-T, a limpet. Now, there's another shell that Richard has here that's special to those of us that are Marylanders. What's that shell you have, Richard?
This shell is called the Maryland State fossil, and it's called Ecphora quadricostata. It doesn't
well, one more time, Richard. What's it called?
It's called Ecphora quadricostata.
Quadri. Now, quad sounds like quadrangle, meaning four. Does that have anything to do with this shell?
Exactly, Dave. The scientists, when they find these things and have discovered that nobody else has described them before, try to give them a name that's based on the Latin or Greek words that they use to help to describe these shells. So the scientists, when they gave it this name, looked, in a sense, into a Greek or Latin dictionary and came up with these words that best describe the unique feature of this shell. Ekphora comes from a word which means projection, or to stick out, or something that sticks out.
And we can see things sticking out here. Now, where does the 4 come in?
The 4 comes in with the second word, or quadricostata. Quadri meaning 4, costata meaning ribs. So if you were to translate that name into what we can be familiar with, the name means a projection of 4 ribs. And if you look at the shell very carefully, you can see these very large ridges or ribs that run around the shell and make it so special.
Okay, so that name is very appropriately chosen, and it's in Latin and Greek, as we were just mentioning, so that if you're here in Washington or you're over in Tokyo, if you use that name, everyone will know exactly what you're talking about. And this is the only show in the world with that name, is that correct?
That's right.
All right, so we have a winner here. We found out that a limpet is the shell we brought in, and Richard, Watson gave me a bone fragment to bring down too. Okay, I came in with a big shopping bag. Can we go over and check out some of the bones here at the Naturalist Center and see if we can match it up?
Sure, we have a lot to look at.
Okay, stay with us. Well, so far, Richard, this has been pretty easy. We went right to that limpet shell without too much investigation. Let's try for 2 in a row here. Watson gave me this bone. He said his grandfather passed this on to him. Now, it doesn't look like a human bone to me. Can you match it to one you have here in your collection?
Yeah, I think we can give this one a try. One of the things that we have in the Natural Center is a collection of similar bones that we've put together from different types of animals. And so that'll save us a lot of time in trying to figure out what this animal was. It's kind of interesting that Watson had this passed down, because these aren't particularly common things to have in your basement or in your attic.
Watson is a strange kind of character, but we all love him. Can we go back to the drawers again? Do we have another collection like we did with the shells?
Yeah, we do. These are all a collection, like I said, of similar bones. We have up here a collection of shoulder blades. This isn't a shoulder blade.
Yeah, that looks very much like what we can feel through our own skin.
Exactly. What we do have down here is a collection of a bone called tibia, which is our shin bone.
Oh, so we're talking about this bone right here.
Exactly.
Okay, the tibia bone, the shin bone. Now, that's what we have then?
Right, that's what it is. It's probably a tibia. And so what we would be doing next is to compare this tibia with these other tibias. This one here looks an awful lot like it, but you can see that this dark one is much, much heavier. And this one here looks an awful lot like it, but it's shorter.
What animal is that you just held up?
This one here is the tibia of a cow, the shin bone of a cow. And so you can see that whatever this animal was, it had to be related some way to a cow.
All right, we're getting close. We're getting warm, as they say. Let's see if this one matches. This looks very close, Richard.
Yeah, I think we've got a match here. This animal is very much the same size and the same length and all that kind of stuff. So I think what we've got here from this label, it says that we have an American buffalo.
Oh, a buffalo. So Grandpa Watson was home on the range somewhere back in American history. Yeah, the buffalo is an American symbol. In fact, we almost wiped out the buffalo. Isn't that true, Richard?
That's right. It's starting to come back now through good management techniques.
So out there on the range, when the buffalo played, there was lots of evidence of the buffalo being around. And here at the Naturalist Center, they have a lot of buffalo evidence. And since we're playing detective today, we can find lots of things that indicate that the buffalo was around. What do you have here, Richard?
Well, come on, let's take a look here. Of course, we have other bones besides tibias. We have here a skull of a buffalo.
What's that on the very top of the skull? It look like a few holes. Are those what I think they are?
Yeah, these are bullet holes. This animal, somebody had shot the buffalo either for food or something similar to that.
So the buffalo was hunted by bow and arrow and by rifle.
Right, right.
All right, so we have the skull. Is that a horn over there to the right?
Yeah, this is what a buffalo horn looks like. It's very coarse and rough textured, and it's made of the same kind of stuff as our fingernails.
Oh, I see. I think it's called keratin, is that right?
That's right.
In fact, if you find horns like this, we saw how we were fooled, how very close the buffalo tibia was to the cow tibia. This horn looks very similar to a cow horn.
Yeah, and it would, because the cow and the bison or the buffalo are very similar to each other.
Okay, what else do we have here? Some more buffalo lore. Now, these look like musket balls.
Well, they're not musket balls, Dave. What it is in fact, this is something that a visitor brought into the Natural Center, puzzled and trying to figure out what they were. And what we did was to take this large one here and to cut it open, and it turned out it was all full of fur.
Oh, this is like a hairball, like a cat would have. Do cows have them as well?
Exactly. In fact, this is probably from a cow or a buffalo, because they have very furry fur. They're always cleaning themselves, just like cats and dogs do. And in this case, this is something that was left in its stomach.
Oh, I see. So yeah, it wouldn't have been a musket ball. I thought maybe the buffalo decided to get even and picked up the rifle. Now, of course, the Indians used to sneak up on the buffalo to hunt them, and they would cover themselves with the hide. Now, do you have that here?
Yeah, we do have at least a part of his hide, and if you like, we can even put a little on so you can get an idea of what it'd be like to be an Indian.
Okay, Mr. Z is going to become Chief Dave here. So if you come down to the Naturalist Center, we can't promise you're going to dress up in a buffalo hide, but if you bring in little artifacts, things that you find around your house or around your school, in your field, come down here and you can find out what those animals are, what those shells are, get the scientific name, and develop into a first-rate naturalist. Where we're going now, I'm not going to forgive Richard for this, where we're going now is we're going to look at a professional illustrator. We're going to draw some of the things here. And in fact, they have a draw-in day where you can come down. There's an identa day and there's also a draw-in day. Let's show you how to draw like a professional does. Stay with us.
Okay, Watson, up to this point, Richard's helped you identify your shell. We now know that you have a limpet that you brought back from your vacation. That bone you gave me from Grandpa Watson actually came from the Great Plains. We identified it as a buffalo, but probably the best part of the Naturalist Center, for me anyhow, is what we're about to do now. They have a draw-in day here where you can come down and draw all the specimens that you see around you here, or bring one of your own. Now, if you devote yourself to drawing as a career, you can be a professional illustrator. And since we're at the Smithsonian, they have scientific illustrators. And joining us today is Elaine Hodges, and she does just that for a living. And you won't believe this, Watson, but this drawing that I have of this carpenter bee took Elaine 60 hours to do. This is a painstaking profession. It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. Elaine's going to explain how she got from the specimen to this finished product. And then to finish today, we're going to give you some tips on how you can do what Elaine does. And we're going to draw our friend the raccoon, who's been watching us all the while we've been here. Elaine, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Can you tell the students, first of all, what some of the equipment is that we see on the table and what the preliminary steps were to get to this final picture?
Okay, this is a microscope.
It sure does look like the ones the students have in school, but with a twist. We don't have all of these lights on the side. Is this called a microscope, in fact?
Oh yes, this is a full-fledged microscope, but it has an addition of a camera lucida, which is a device that allows me to get a rough drawing of the bee and all its little parts, and then I can go through several steps and end up here. I guess what you should understand is that when I get a bee or any kind of insect to draw, it doesn't look pretty like this.
You've dressed him up a little bit.
I've dressed him up, yes. It might look as though somebody had stepped on him. Mm-hmm. And he's got crumpled legs and bent wings, so I have to move the specimen around and draw little parts that...
Let's see some of the parts, some of the steps that you go through, Elaine.
All right, here are the parts that I would draw using the camera lucida and the microscope.
When you say camera lucida, is that two words?
Yes, two words.
And lucida refers to light, so you have a special light source on here.
No, well, you have a light on the object that's under the microscope, the specimen, but lucida in this case does not mean that there is any light connected with the camera lucida, and it isn't a camera. It's a funny name because it isn't a camera and it isn't a light.
So wonder why we call it camera lucida. But Elaine was saying earlier that when the specimen goes beneath the microscope, on the stage, if you will, she is actually tracing. Is that correct, Elaine?
Yes.
And those of you out there who can't draw a straight line and aren't artistic at all and are looking at this saying, boy, I can't do that, by using the camera lucida, you can make an attempt at it, because if you can trace, you can do some of what Elaine does. And as you can see, it looks like a jigsaw puzzle when she's finished. She's going to make all of these small drawings, and I'll let her continue the story.
That's a good point. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. When I look into the microscope, with 2 eyes, I see 3 images, because the mirror reflects the paper, and your eyes see the bee and the piece of paper reflected in here. So it looks as though the specimen or the bee is sitting on the paper, and then I just take my pencil and trace around the image I see on the paper. Which it really isn't there, it just looks like it's there.
Okay, so you've been fooled, but the end result is something we all want to see. Some of the other pictures that you have here on the table, Elaine, could we see those? Is there a sequential order here that you follow step by step?
Yes, there is. I've done my little bits and pieces.
Okay, that's the first one.
And then I put them all together and draw all the details in there by eye. I put in all the little hairs, and what's very important with insects are the veins in the wing. They have to be exactly right. After I get all this detail in there, and you see I've drawn only half of the insect to save time, then I take this to the scientist, and she or he will check the specimen against the drawing, compare this with the bee and see if it's correct. And if it's correct, then I go on and do the final drawing.
It's amazingly complex. It looks as if you've taken a photograph of the bee. Now, for students out there who are being acquainted with scientific illustration for the first time, we've mentioned how long it takes to do this. Now, your specialty is insects.
Correct.
What kind of training would you recommend to students if they would like to do something like this? How did you get started as an illustrator?
Well, I was interested in both art and science. I was trained in art. I did not get much training in science initially at the beginning, but I got into this job by accident. Someone happened to need an artist and just hired me. Then I learned on the job. Eventually, I went back to school to study entomology, which is the study of insects, because I was interested in insects. And I studied other science topics like plants, botany, or zoology, the general study of animals. Nowadays, artists are going into this being trained both in science and in art. They go to college and they get a degree that combines art and science. It's a good field for people who like both science and art, but they don't want to be an artist and they don't want to be a scientist.
You get the best of both worlds.
Yes.
So if you have an interest, one of the best places to start would be to come down here to the Naturalist Center. You've got to start somewhere. And if you've got that interest and you're willing to make the commitment as Elaine has made, this is what you can do eventually. You can come down here and work for the Smithsonian, work for the government. Now, if this looks a little too complicated, and it's too complicated for me, our friend the raccoon has been watching us carefully throughout our visit here, and Elaine's going to show us how to draw an object larger than a bumblebee. If you come down here with your pencil and your paper, let's get some tips on how to draw something that's large, like a raccoon. Can you help us out, Elaine?
Yes, we can try. Now, if I were trying to be really accurate, I might use a device like this called a proportional divider. Now, a scientific illustrator who was going to do this drawing with for a research paper like this, they would carefully take measurements and hold this up against the raccoon's head, perhaps, get the measurement.
Okay, so you would hold this against, and this would help you in getting the proportion.
Right. It would be the same thing as my camera lucida drawing, only this is too big to put under the microscope.
Okay.
So then I hold it up and say the head measures this big on this side, then I put the other side down on my paper and make dots, and that tells me how wide the head is.
Oh, I see. So, it's like an analogy. It's comparable, the bottom to the top?
Yes, well, you set it for how big you want it. This is set for 2 times, so that
I see.
this is 2 times this size. But I could set it for different sizes.
Okay, now we're not trying to turn you off. Already we're getting a little complicated here. We want to make this very simple. And Elaine has some suggestions for you about simple objects, triangles and circles and cylinders and squares that can help you make this raccoon appear on your paper. Let's see it.
What you want to look for are basic shapes. The body might be considered an ellipse, and the head a triangle. If you start out this way, it makes the drawing simpler. The ears are little triangles. The tail is maybe like a cylinder, maybe like a twisted ice cream cone. Here, if you'll notice, the leg is a square, more or less. This part of the leg that has the animal's elbow right in here is shaped like a square a bit. And then you have a little rectangle coming off here and another little rectangle here. Here's another rectangle, and then a slightly bent rectangle for this other foot. The back foot, you can see, is just a little bit of a curve, and then there's a foot back here. Then you have this basic series of shapes, and you can put in all the details, like connecting dots in a way. You can erase the parts you don't like. Look for the general big areas of dark, like the patch, the mask the raccoon wears. You can put in the eye here in the middle of his mask. Have him looking at something. There. Here's the other little mask. And he's got a little patch here. Here's his little nose, which is almost a circle, not quite. There's some darkness back here. And we get some stripes on the tail. And it looks a little bit of like a raccoon. After you've got the general shapes, then you can really start concentrating on detail. And at the very end, you would put in things like the hair tufts. And you could erase all these guidelines so they don't show.
So as Elaine is finishing up her drawing of the raccoon, I hope you can see that if you know simple shapes, no matter what you're looking at, you can reduce it and make a fair attempt at doing what Elaine's doing. Now, she's given me a piece of paper and a pencil here. I don't know how well I'm going to do, but I'm going to try the same thing. Hope you come down to the Naturalist Center and see Richard and Elaine and the other people who work here. They want to work with you. They want to make you as excited about natural history as they are. So come on down. The raccoon's going to be watching you. Thanks for coming along today.
This is a beautiful specimen. My masterpiece is almost completed. A couple dots here and a little line here. Oh, it's so beautiful, and voila, a masterpiece.